I just finished playing the Final Horizon DLC, and I feel like that Rick and Morty scene where they get back to their spaceship and cry from pure exhaustion. It seems that I'm not alone in this sentiment. If you scroll through Twitter, you'll see people comparing the game to Dark Souls and apologizing to Sega for saying that Sonic Frontiers was too easy, because this DLC is anything but. It took me a good 11 hours to complete the main story of Final Horizon. The game was very difficult. I would say unfairly so. Let's start with the trial towers. Look, I'm all for a good challenge in a game, but when climbing these towers, there were sections that felt totally unnecessary. Like, why do you need to add that? Like, you do not need to add those dash panels on that platform. It just makes it annoying. Sonic Frontiers was not built for this precisive style platforming. The controls for Sonic are already janky enough when it comes to moving on flat ground. Incorporating these controls when climbing the towers results in frustration rather than being a welcomed challenge. What? Whenever I fell from a tower, which happened a lot, I felt like that meme on TikTok that compared this experience to Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. And for a game that places great importance on strategic platforming, you'd think that Sega would fix the terrible pop-in for this update. One of the most frustrating aspects of the game is having to basically guess where to move next because the platform you need to get to won't appear until you're like a foot away from it. This mix of janky controls and terrible pop-in is a sad reminder of how unpolished Sonic Frontiers was and continues to be. Next, we gotta talk about the boss rush. During the final trial, players are required to beat 3 of the main bosses in the game with no ring refill. Meaning, whatever your max ring count is, that's what you're stuck with. For those unfamiliar, rings act as both a health bar and a time limit during boss fights. So if you get hit or you take too long, you're actually one step closer to having to start the trial all over again. And mind you, these bosses are already difficult to defeat on their own, but players are expected to fight all 3. Another condition during the boss rush is the expectation for players to use perfect parries. This means that the boss can only be countered at the exact frame he attacks. With all of this in mind, I just have one question for Sega. Why? Who hurt you? It was probably us, honestly, but still. It's funny, I looked up how to perfect parry in Sonic Frontiers, and this guy basically said to just change the difficulty. And so I did. I switched the difficulty from normal to easy. I knew in my mind there was no way I could complete this challenge on normal. But despite this change, the game was still very hard to beat. For me, the boss rush highlights how jarring the difficulty is between the Final Horizon DLC and the main Sonic Frontiers game. I saw a meme saying, can you imagine being a kid who completed the main story in Sonic Frontiers and the total whiplash you'd feel trying to beat the DLC? Like, I'm an adult and I struggled completing this thing. What would have been more appropriate would be for Sega to provide a more reasonable scale of difficulty in Final Horizon. This feature would make the DLC accessible to a wider range of players, because I'm fine with the DLC's current difficulty, but make it an option, not a requirement. Now, some of you may be thinking, man, did you just completely hate this game? This may surprise you, but my answer is no. For me, the game's saving grace was and continues to be the characters. I love how the characters were fleshed out in Sonic Frontiers, and to have Knuckles, Amy, and Tails playable in a mainline 3D Sonic game after nearly 2 decades of absence is a sign to me that Sega is listening to its fans. To make these characters playable shows me that Sega has at least a faint recognition of the wealth of characters they possess. And as you can expect, implementing these characters in the game is far, far from perfect. But despite Knuckles being able to float forever, or Amy barely able to use her hammer in her moveset, or the decision to have Tails throw wrenches as his main attack for some reason, just the fact that these characters are playable makes these issues worth bearing. Dude, I can't believe it. I'm playing as Knuckles. Throughout the entirety of Frontiers, Sonic was willing to sacrifice everything to save his friends. In Final Horizon, we see that his friends are willing to do the same for him. Playing as Amy, Knuckles, and Tails isn't only fun, but is a feature that deepens the relationship these characters have with each other. Now, the final boss fight was no walk in the park either. I had no idea what to do, so I looked up a tutorial online, and even after that, I had to increase my ring capacity because towards the end of the fight, there's a cutscene that literally depletes your remaining rings. I don't know why they did this. Like, why? Why was this necessary? I don't understand. Why? But but I persevered. And the ending was worth it. Final Horizon felt like the true ending for Sonic Frontiers. The final fight ends with Sonic being shot out of a gun aimed at an enemy literally called the End. As the agent of change in the game, Sonic is literally the bullet fired at the end to signify that the end really isn't the end. And I hope this metaphor is true for Sonic's future games. Look, Final Horizon is a mixed bag. The issues of the game weigh it down, but the good it has makes me a bit more optimistic for Sonic's future. What I hope is that Sonic Frontiers and its DLC Final Horizon is a small step towards something better. So what'd you guys think of the Final Horizon DLC? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want a deeper analysis of the themes behind Sonic Frontiers, click this video right here. But if you enjoyed my review, please leave this video a like, it helps support the channel. Subscribe and hit that bell icon if you want to see more videos like these. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, peace out.